Now, a lot of you thought you were coming to a boring instruction by Dr. Waller, but instead you're coming to a boring speaker such as myself. No. The reason I'm here is because I'm passionate about helping students such as yourself. I'm passionate about helping students specifically who have mental or physical conditions be successful in the classroom using one simple breathing technique. Now, this technique is much simpler than putting pants on a squirrel. You can laugh. No, it really is a simple technique, and a lot of it has to do with just being able to breathe. Now, we know that stress is part of your lives by being a student, correct? How many of you thought that you were signing up for just a course? This is what, Intro to Psychology? How many of you thought you were signing up just for Intro to Psychology? Raise your hands. Most people did. Some people aren't sure. I'm not sure why I'm here. But really what you signed up for was stress. Because Dr. Waller here is going to stress you out with exams. Do you have papers in this class?
No.
No paper. Maybe you could add a paper. Increase the stress. No. Okay. How about presentations?
No.
No. Maybe you need to add at least one presentation. What about student debt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people are stressed over the debt. And the debt, the exams, the presentations that you may have in other classes, whatever it may be, many times when you have already pre-existing conditions, that causes a lot of problems with being able to focus and when being able to concentrate. And the National Alliance on Mental Illness indicates that 1 out of 5 students has a mental condition. So if you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's one person who has a mental condition. And so we've got, over 20 people here? So that's astonishing. We also have the American College of Health indicates that anxiety and depression are the 2 most common conditions. Anxiety and depression. And so students are not only suffering with these mental conditions, but also with physical, which impacts how you come into the class, whether you've got pain, chronic pain, or something else going on. All of that you're bringing into this classroom, right? But before I go any further, and I get into more detail about this simple technique, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have a PhD in clinical psychology from the California School of Professional Psychology in Fresno, California. Anybody know where Fresno is? It's out in the Central Valley. It's midway between LA and San Francisco. And so I have a master's as well from CSPP, is what I call it, California School of Professional Psychology. And then I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Rutgers University. How many people have heard of Rutgers? What state is Rutgers in? Jersey! You were close. They're right across the river there. Right across the river. And so I went up to New Jersey and I got my undergrad, and then I went right out to California. I got my graduate degree. And since I've graduated, I've worked in a variety of mental health centers. I've worked in inpatient, psychiatric hospitals, outpatient. I've worked in student centers and a university. I've worked in forensic settings, group homes, and even prison. How many people have heard of Corcoran? You ever seen that show, Lock Up? On, was it CNBC or something? Where they go through different prisons within the United States, and they highlight one and they go inside. It's like being in, and they show you what goes on. Well, Corcoran was one of those prisons. And Corcoran housed a famous inmate, probably one of the most famous in the world, who died a year or so ago. Anybody know who that is? Anybody heard of Charles Manson? If you haven't heard of him, look him up. Google, not in class, after class. And Charlie was there while I was working there. And I met him a couple of times, saw him within a couple of feet distance. He wasn't someone that I worked with. So that's kind of some of the experience that I have. Now, I started in mental health back in 1992 as a volunteer at PD Mental Health. So going way back. And so I just jumped in working for free. And I enjoyed it so much that I decided to further my education and go and get a degree. But before I accomplished any of those things, before I got my undergraduate degree at Rutgers, and before I went out to California and obtained my PhD and master's, and before I worked at any of these sites, I was sitting right where you are today. I was sitting in Greenville Tech. Anybody ever heard of Greenville Tech?
Yep.
So this is Midlands Tech, right? See, I'm from the upstate, you were a student there. So I literally was. I was sitting right where you are. And I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I had no clue. I was anxious about being in school because I didn't have a good track record. I graduated at the back of my high school class at Travelers Rest High School, right outside of Greenville. Literally at the back of my high school class. And the only reason I ended up at Greenville Tech is because my father said, Tim, what are you going to do now that you graduated high school? And I said, I'm not sure. And he said, well, maybe you ought to go to college. And I said, Dad, did you look at my GPA? Did you see my class rank? Wasn't so good. He says, well, I don't care. You better get your butt down there and register if you want to continue to live at home. So you can imagine that was motivating for me enough to go to Greenville Tech and sign up. And so I signed up. I passed some classes and I failed some classes. And it wasn't until I took my first Intro to Psychology class where I finally perked up, I finally had interest in something, and I did well. And I did well because I went to the instructor and I said, I don't have a good track record. I've struggled. I don't know how to really study. Because growing up to that point, I was always told, study hard and get what? Good grades. But what people left out was, well, how in the world do you study hard? What does that mean? Everybody thought it was just like common knowledge, but I was missing out on it. So I had that instructor sit down with me and she taught me some skills, how to study, and I applied that and I ended up bringing up my grades. Now, that helped me to bring up my grades and to carry me along. But what kept me kind of dragging behind, what was like a weight, an anchor hooked to my leg, was anxiety, was depression, was feeling like I still wasn't smart enough. I had low self-confidence, and I had ADD. And so I struggled. Even though I had these new skills of how to study, which I didn't have before, which was great, but it was only part of the puzzle. And so I continued to struggle throughout my career. Throughout going, when I went to undergrad, when I went to graduate school, I was deathly afraid of giving presentations. Never would have imagined myself standing here today. I would tremble, I would shake, people were coming up wiping my forehead because I was so nervous. But it didn't have to be that way, but it was. And it all came crashing down on me in the summer of 1992 as I was studying for an exam. I was up late one night and I felt my chest start to hurt. It felt really tight. I never felt that before. I'm like, what's going on? This is not right. And so I took off to the ER. And I went to the emergency room, and after a couple of hours, they sent me home. And they said, no, you didn't have a heart attack, you had a panic attack. And I'm like, dang, what the heck? This is crazy. And that was at an undergrad. And I still didn't have any skills. I continued to go on, got into graduate school, struggled in graduate school, but then I started to learn some new skills. I learned some skills through the program that I was in. I started going to therapy, and that helped me tremendously. And so I was at a point where I'm like, man, I did not have to go through that. I never had to just struggle. But once I went through graduate training, and once I started working with clients, I started helping them manage depression, anxiety, and other conditions. in their life. I also worked with students as well. And one of the factors and one of the coping skills that I used was breathing. And so I saw the impact. And 3 clients that come to mind. One is Lee, who at the time was a 30-year-old mother of 2. She was in graduate school and she was suffering from anxiety. Another that comes to mind is Dave. Dave was a 50-year-old. He was divorced. He was going to get his undergraduate degree. He was going back to school. I know here at Midlands Tech, there are many people who are going back to school after many years. And Dave was suffering from depression. And then I worked with a 23-year-old professional athlete. His name was Shane. And he was freshly picked up. This was on a motocross team. And his whole future had just arrived. But he was so anxious, he was nervous, he couldn't focus. And I worked with him. He had millions of dollars that could come his way if he only performed well. And so those are just 3 examples. And at that point, I worked with these guys, I helped them. I said, you know what? It's worked with me, it's worked with these other clients. I need to really reach out and just focus on students. And that's why I'm here today. To help anybody who may be struggling with any mental, with any physical, or just struggling with stress in general. Now, before I teach you this breathing technique, let me tell you a little bit about what's happening in our body when we become stressed. So we have this system called the autonomic nervous system. You guys cover that in this class?
Next chapter.
Next chapter, okay. And within the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is part of the whole stress response team. Think of it that way. So when you're under stress, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, sounds the alarm, the hormones come rushing in, the gates drop, and there's a flood of hormones. And so what happens during this state? Has any of you ever felt stressed? You ever felt like, oh my God, what's just happened? Right? Whether you were in an accident or whether you're walking in the street and someone goes to rob you or whatever it might be, or having to come up and do a presentation that Dr. Waller's going to start assigning. And you come up here and you'd been practicing. No, I'm just kidding. See, I just raised up your fight or flight response. But when those hormones kick in, it's telling your body, you need to fight your way out or you need to run. And your body goes through different changes because those hormones have rushed in. Your pupils are going to dilate, your muscles are going to tense up, your breathing is going to change, it's going to be short and shallow, or you might even start holding your breath because you need to fight. The same response, if you were walking through the woods, anybody like to hike? No hikers. You certainly won't hike after I tell you the story. You're walking through the woods and you stumble upon a bear. And there's a big bear in your path. You're going to go into that fight or flight. Just like I told you, the system, the autonomic nervous system is going to turn on. The sympathetic nervous system is going to release the hormones. The floodgate's going to happen. Now, the worst thing you can do when you come upon a bear is to run. Because that's going to trigger their instinct to go and just eat you. You certainly don't want to fight them either because they're very, very strong and they have big teeth. So you just want to stand and be tall. So you're kind of going against what your body's telling you. But just like walking in the woods and coming upon a bear, when Dr. Wallace says you're going to be giving oral presentations in here, your body doesn't know the difference. If you're deathly afraid of giving presentations, guess what? The autonomic nervous system is going to turn on. The sympathetic nerve is going to kick in, the flood of hormones. Your heart's going to start beating. It's going to feel like it's beating out of your chest. Your pupils are going to dilate. Your muscles are going to get very, very tight, and your breathing is going to change. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the woods with a bear or whether you are with Dr. Waller giving a presentation. Your body doesn't know the difference. Now finally, we come to this technique. So how do you calm yourself down when you have stress? Stress from a mental condition, stress from a physical condition, stress from school, stress from debt. Well, it's called belly breathing. Anybody ever heard of that? Or abdominal breathing? Yeah. So a couple of people are like, yeah, I've heard it. And most of you are either tired and like, whatever. Or you haven't, right? And we had one person who did fall asleep. Did she really fall asleep? Huh? Uh-oh. We're going to have to get her flight. She'll be the first one to have the presentation, Dr. Waller. So anyway, so with this breathing skill, you're going to breathe in through your nose. Again, it's very, very simple. You're breathing in through your nose, counting to 3. So 1, 2, 3. As you breathe in, many people are used to breathing in, and 2 things happen. Their chest kind of pushes out, or their shoulders raise. That tells me, and that tells you, you're doing it wrong. Belly breathing is where your belly pushes out. So your chest and your shoulders should not move. It takes some skill, it takes some practice. She's looking at me like, what? So you're going to breathe in, counting to 3 in through your nose. Your belly's pushing out. Once you've kind of filled that cavity up, you're going to count to 3 and hold it. 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to exhale out through your mouth. Okay? Now everybody practice that. So everybody take your hand, a hand or both hands, however you want. Place it on your belly. Now everybody breathe in while I count to 3, in through your nose only. And then once I tell you stop, then just hold it, and then I'll count to 3, and then we'll exhale. Okay, ready? Go. Breathe in through your nose. 1, 2, 3. You feel your belly pushing out. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. And then we do it again. You got to do it 2 more times. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3. And then one more time. Inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. Now that you've done that, do any of you notice that you feel a little bit tingly? Maybe a little bit lightheaded? You might feel a little more relaxed. It takes practice. Think of that lower diaphragm as kind of the largest volume area that you can bring in oxygen. You can bring in air. So your upper diaphragm is much smaller. The lower diaphragm is much larger. But when you don't use it, it becomes very difficult for you to be able to get used to doing this. How many of you ever been with the task of blowing up balloons for a birthday party? And not with the helium, but with your mouth, right? We've all done that. So what is it like when you have a brand new balloon and you're trying to put air in it? Does it go in easy the first time? No. What do you got to do? You got to stretch it. So by you practicing this belly breath, it's stretching that area. And as you become more efficient, it starts to stretch out and it becomes easier. And so what does this mean? You know, I'm breathing, I'm getting oxygen. We know, I just told you about the stress response, but now you're breathing. So how does that do anything? Well, what happens is the oxygen levels in your blood start to increase. And that blood goes to all the different areas and regions of your body. It goes to your brain, most importantly, but it also goes to every organ and every other muscle group, everywhere in your body. So it's sending extra oxygen everywhere. And when you have that extra oxygen, let's talk about the brain first. So you have extra oxygen to your brain, what happens to your thinking? Does it become more clear or more foggy? Clear. When you get more oxygen to your muscles, what would your guess be? Do they get looser or do they get stiff? Loose. They get more loose, right? So your body is actually reversing that entire fight or flight response. It is resetting that autonomic nervous system. Does that make sense? And so when you practice this, this will help you counter anything that's going on. A presentation, an exam that makes you nervous. Maybe you have some physical conditions or something mental going on you're stressed about. Maybe you just had a fight with a loved one before you come to this class. And you get tense, right? You get that headache, you can't breathe, your breath is shallow, you can't focus, And then you take Dr. Waller's exam and you fail it. And then after the exam, you go to Dr. Waller and you're like, my girlfriend and my boyfriend, they made me upset before I came to the class. What is Dr. Waller going to say? Sorry, not my problem. Right? Not my problem. So, when you come to an exam, would you rather have a tense body, tense muscles, a headache? You can't breathe, you feel a tightness in your chest, and you're trying to go over every question? Or do you want to come to Dr. Waller's exam and feel fresh? You feel relaxed, your muscles are relaxed, there's no tightness in your body, there's no tightness in your head. Heck yeah, you're going to do much better. You're going to do much, much better because you're going to be reset. And this is something that I use with my 5-year-old. Well, he's 6. He just turned 6, so he's 6 now. He'd probably be upset if I called him 5. Sorry, Landon. If you see this, you're 6. So anyway, I help him. He has not diagnosed ADD or ADHD. Anyway, what's the difference between ADD and ADHD? Who knows the difference?
ADHD for hyper.
Hyper. Right. ADD is just more of attention deficit. Well, ADD stands for attention deficit disorder, and ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So you've got the attentional problem and the hyperactivity with ADHD. But anyway, when he's not really focused or he's upset, I help him with this breathing, and it works. So he loves it. So there is a study, and I'll have to read this because I haven't memorized it, but back in 2005, the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine indicated that yogic breathing, which is very similar, can balance the autonomic nervous system. And this is coming from a journal. And it helps to alleviate anxiety, depression, and everyday stress. Also, Dr. Dean Ornish, he is a cardiologist and a Harvard Medical School clinical fellow. He incorporates breath management to help reduce stress as part of his program. Now get this, to reverse heart disease. Dang, reverse heart disease? All we ever heard was just about you got to prevent it, but once you get it, you're done. But not Dr. Ornish. He's like, no, you can reverse it. So he has a couple of other things, including diet that's part of his program, but breathing is a key component to help reduce stress. Now, I'm different with this whole thing. You know, there's a lot of people who talk about breathing and about breath work and about, or you get stressed, just take a deep breath. That's not what I'm saying. The reason I'm different is because I want you to incorporate this into your everyday routine all day long. So think of the other people who were talking about breathing as the ice pack theory. Anybody play sports in here or did at some point? Right? You twist an ankle, you got a bruise or something's going on. When you get home, you grab an ice pack, you heat or you cold or whatever it might be. And I never get it right, which one you're supposed to use. Whether you're supposed to use heat or cold, I used to use both. Because I'm not sure. But the ice pack theory is you use it when you've got like something going on. And then otherwise, the ice pack goes back in the freezer and you never see it again until you get hurt again. And a lot of people teach this breathing techniques the same way. Only use it when you need it. No, I'm saying if you change the way that you breathe throughout every day, throughout your entire day, I look at it as a prescription breathing method. Just like a timed release medication. If you take a time release medication, what does it do to your chemical levels the entire day?
Ulcers is all day long.
Right, it keeps them stable all day so that they're not jumping up and down. So other people are teaching the breathing technique for you to just use it once you spike and then bring yourself back down. Wait till you spike and then bring it back down. But what I'm saying is to use it all day long to keep you even keeled. So you don't have to be taken back. You don't have to be attacked by stress. You don't have to be attacked by anxiety. You don't have to be attacked by any physical condition that you're going through. I don't know how many of you get anxious when you go to physical doctors and you get a medical appointment and you got to get, an exam or blood work or get a shot or something. It makes you anxious and nervous. You can incorporate this into your day so that you don't even have to just use it when you get there. If you were an anxious person before, you can set yourself up in the beginning of the day to be cool and calm and collected all day long. Now, I know some of you are thinking, come on, Dr. Laskis, you got to be kidding me. This stuff is crazy. I've been breathing since I was born. This sounds too difficult, and it sounds too darn good to be true. Right? I used to think the same thing. I used to think the same thing until I started working with clients and teaching them this. I used to think the same thing until I started using it myself. So I've seen directly the benefits of how this works and how it can help you. But let me give you a quick tip. And this happened to me on Sunday. Today's what, Tuesday? Sunday when I was in church. I'm standing there and we're standing up during Mass, and I'm just kind of, my mind's just kind of wandering, and I start doing my breathing. But I wasn't doing it to where most people could recognize. And there was a guy that was standing to my right, and all of a sudden he turned around and looked at me. He didn't say anything. And I know I didn't make any noise, and I didn't have any change in my pocket. I wasn't doing anything. And then it hit me. When I exhale, I'm like, I just had coffee. I bet he smelled my breath. So make sure you have gum or candy. Make sure you have good breath. Because it's going to annoy the people that are around you. That's a quick tip right there. But look, I'm going to give you guys something. At the end, and I'm almost done, I'm going to pass out a feedback form. And all I ask are two things, is that you take 30 seconds to feed it out, to give me some feedback on how this presentation is, how valuable you think the information is, how cool or valuable or unvaluable you think I am as a speaker. The other thing that I want you to do is just tell two people about the breathing technique. Share it with two people that you know that they may be able to benefit from this. Maybe they're struggling with something going on with stress in their life, a mental or a physical condition, and it can help them. There's also a bonus, and I'm going to send this to you by email. If you decide to fill out the feedback form and you want me to send you a cheat sheet of everything I just talked about, I'll do that. So I'll send you a cool little cheat sheet by email, and then I'll add a little bonus link of how to take it deeper, and then I'll add a bonus link of a meditation, a guided meditation that I did on my podcast, which I forgot to mention that earlier, that I'm also a podcast host. So I'll give you that. But before I end, my goal is to have 1,000 students hear this message. So your feedback is going to help me to get there. So you're the first class. You're my guinea pig class, right? So this is cool, and this can help me. But before I go, that one athlete that I had shared earlier, his name is Shane, that was a pro athlete. I started working with him back in 2014. And he had just been signed to a race team. And since then, he's made well over $1 million. Now, I can't attribute my work that I did with him to his success, but I know it was a part. And so just imagine what you could do in this class, on this campus, in your life, and your overall goals. That you could use this if you approached everything that you come in contact with, everything that you decide to do, if you came at it more calm, more stress-free, and you didn't feel super overwhelmed or nervous, think of what you could accomplish. Just like Shane accomplished that. All of you, I'm sure, have your own goals. And so, go ahead and use it and make it work for you. So, I just want to thank you for having me today, and I'm going to pass out these feedback forms. Thank you, Dr. Waller, for having me in class. It was a pleasure. And I have my email address here. If you have any questions, and you're like, hey, I didn't get that, or whatever it might be, you can feel free to email me at timlaskis@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and there was one other thing that I said earlier. This breathing technique is easier than
Putting pants on a squirrel.
putting pants on a squirrel. All right, she gets a bonus point.